they reached the enemy, everything changed. HFY the universe, once a boundless canvas of wonders and future hopes, had become a canvas of stark, burning grief for humanity. Only weeks had passed, yet the memory of the great collapse felt etched into the very fabric of existence, a raw wound refusing to heal. It had come without warning, a sudden, merciless hammer blow that had shattered the intricate orbital defenses cradling Earth, twisting the planet's blue-green beauty into a scarred, smoldering husk. From the far reaches of human-settled space, the echoes of that final, agonizing cry from billions of dying voices still resonated in the hearts and minds of those who survived, a sound more deafening than any explosion. What remained of the homeworld was not a symbol of life, but a stark, silent monument to loss, a floating tomb in the cosmic void. The architects of this unimaginable devastation, an alien empire swiftly and chillingly labeled the Xylos, had vanished as quickly and mysteriously as they had appeared, leaving behind only the cold ashes of humanity's cradle and a burning, unquenchable desire for something more potent than justice pure, unadulterated retribution across the sprawling network of 1,000 star systems. From the bustling megacities of Nova Terra to the icy outposts on Kepler 186f, a unified, guttural call went out, reverberating through every comms channel, every broadcast, every whispered prayer. Avenge Earth. It was not a plea, but a command. A collective vow born from sorrow and an incandescent rage that threatened to consume everything in its path. This profound, shared grief acted as a catalyst, igniting a furious, unprecedented wave of mobilization throughout the human confederacy. Shipyards that had once leisurely constructed exploration vessels and cargo haulers now hummed with a terrifying, relentless urgency, their massive gantries swinging with a feverish intensity, churning out vessels of war at a pace never before conceived. Each new hull that emerged from the fabrication bays was not just a machine. It was a testament to humanity's grim resilience, a steel-plated extension of their collective pain and unwavering resolve. For every civilian factory converted, for every resource redirected, for every hour of sleep sacrificed by engineers and technicians, the purpose remained singular: to build the mightiest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. From every corner of the Confederacy, recruits, young and old, experienced and fresh-faced, flocked to the training academies and embarkation points. Their faces, once filled with the mundane concerns of daily life, were now hardened by a shared sorrow, their eyes reflecting a singular, distant goal. They bore the weight of their species' future, their gazes fixed on the unknown expanse where the Xylos supposedly resided, a thirst for vengeance burning behind their irises. The numbers of ships and personnel swelled with dizzying speed, a force growing exponentially, driven by the sheer will of a species pushed to its breaking point. Entire planetary defense forces were repurposed, their highly trained soldiers and starship pilots signing on for the long, uncertain voyage. Civilian freighters were refitted with reinforced plating and weapon hardpoints, their cargo bays stripped bare to make way for missile launchers and energy conduits. Scientists worked round the clock in dimly lit labs, pushing the boundaries of plasma shielding and warp drive efficiency, driven by a desperate need to give their fighting forces every possible advantage. The scale of the undertaking was mind-boggling, unprecedented in recorded history, dwarfing every conflict that had come before. Finally, after months that felt like an eternity, the monumental task reached its apex. The flagship Retribution, a colossal vessel of sleek, dark alloys and bristling with weaponry, took its position at the head of the assembled might. Her captain, Admiral Elara Vance, a woman whose usually calm demeanor was now underscored by a steely glint in her eyes and a faint tremor of deep resolve, stood on the bridge, overseeing the final preparations. Her command team, a mix of seasoned veterans and brilliant young tacticians, moved with precision, their faces grim but determined. The Retribution was not just a ship. It was the physical embodiment of humanity's unified rage, a spearhead designed to pierce the heart of their enemy. Behind her, stretching for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, was the rest of the fleet, a shimmering, intimidating river of steel and plasma, a sight that brought both terror and a fierce pride to those who witnessed it. This was no mere retaliatory strike. This was an exodus of retribution. The final tally was staggering, almost unbelievable. A colossal armada of 900,000 warships, each one armed to the teeth, each one carrying a crew whose souls yearned for vengeance. As the synchronized countdown code through the fleets comes, the colossal engines of the leading ships began to thrum, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through every deck. The stars, which had once felt so distant and unreachable, now seemed to draw closer, beckoning them towards a destiny forged in fire and sorrow. The sheer kinetic energy of the launch was immense, shaking the very space around them. One by one, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands, the mighty vessels disengaged from their orbital docks, their thrusters flaring with brilliant, silent fury. They moved with a terrifying grace, a cosmic ballet of destruction, forming a vast, organized formation that stretched beyond the visible horizon. The Retribution led the charge, its primary drive core flaring to life, initiating the first jump into warp space. The stars outside the viewports blurred into streaks of light, then elongated into shimmering tunnels. As the fleet plunged into the folds of faster-than-light travel, there was no turning back, no second thoughts, only the singular, all-consuming purpose that propelled them forward into the vast, unknown darkness. They were a hammer poised to strike, a force unmatched in galactic history, all bent on one purpose, the complete and utter annihilation of the Xylos. The journey had begun. The journey, seemingly endless expanse of shimmering warp tunnels and silent, star-dusted voids, spanned not just weeks or months, but years. The sheer, colossal mass of the Armada, 900,000 warships strong, stretched out like a molten river of steel and plasma, flowing through nebulae that glowed with eerie, unearthly light, and navigating treacherous, uncharted asteroid fields where unseen dangers lurked. Each vessel, from the smallest fighter to the mightiest dreadnought, was a self-contained world, teeming with life, yet utterly consumed by a grim, unyielding determination. On the command deck of the Retribution, Admiral Ilara Vance, her face, often etched with a quiet intensity, spent her days hunched over holographic displays, her fingers tracing the projected paths of distant stars, her mind ceaselessly sifting through every fragment of intelligence ever gleaned about the Xylos. The information was agonizingly scarce, a collection of vague sensor readings from the initial attack, faint traces of their energy, signatures, and speculative theories from desperate xenolinguists. It was like trying to understand an entire civilization from a single, broken whisper. Her crews, the heart and soul of this monumental endeavor, were a diverse cross-section of humanity's finest, battle-hardened pilots with eyes that had seen too much. Brilliant engineers who could coax impossible speeds from ancient engines, and sharp-witted strategists who played out every possible combat scenario in their minds 1,000 times over. They endured rigorous, relentless simulations, day in and day out, their reflexes sharpening, their teamwork becoming a seamless, silent language. The digital echoes of simulated Xylos attacks filled their training rooms, pushing them to their limits, honing their combat readiness to an almost superhuman degree. Yet, beneath the veneer of military discipline and professional focus, a deeper struggle was always present, wrestling with the profound psychological toll of their mission. The memories of Earth's fall were not abstract historical facts. They were living, breathing wounds. Stories of loved ones lost, cities turned to dust, and the final desperate pleas from a dying world were recounted in hushed tones in mess halls and crew quarters, fueling their resolve, hardening their hearts against any flicker of doubt. The initial burning rage that had propelled them into space remained, constant, smoldering ember deep within them. But as the countless parsecs stretched into an almost unbearable infinity, whispers of a different kind occasionally surfaced. In quiet moments, during the long watches where stars were the only companions, questions began to creep into the minds of even the most resolute. What if the Xylos were stronger than anticipated? What if the initial attack was merely a probe, a test of humanity's resolve, and a much larger, more terrifying force awaited them? What if this entire vengeful expedition was, in fact, a colossal, elaborately laid trap, luring humanity's military might far from its scattered colonies, leaving them vulnerable to a true, devastating strike? These anxieties, though quickly suppressed, were like phantom pains, nagging unease in the collective consciousness of the fleet. The vastness of space, usually a source of wonder, now seemed to amplify their fears, making the enemy's unknown strength feel even more immense and unknowable. Admiral Vance herself was not immune to these silent battles. Late into the solitary nights, she would stand before the main viewport of her personal quarters, staring out at the streaking warp lanes, a mug of cold synthesized coffee clutched forgotten in her hand, the weight of billions of lives, both lost and those still living, who depended on this mission, pressed down on her. Every tactical decision, every course correction, every moment of quiet contemplation was shadowed by the ghosts of Earth. She knew the morale of her fleet was a delicate thing, fueled by fury, but vulnerable to prolonged uncertainty. She held daily briefings, not just to convey orders, but to reaffirm their purpose, to remind them of the burning memories of a fallen Earth and the silent vow of revenge that continued to push them forward, an unstoppable tide. Her voice, calm and steady, was a beacon of unwavering resolve, designed to quell any rising anxieties. As the final galactic arm curved away behind them, becoming a distant, hazy spiral in their wake, the fleet approached the estimated Silos territory. The stars ahead, once indistinguishable from billions of others, now held the terrifying promise of confrontation. The atmosphere throughout the Armada underwent a subtle but profound shift. The low hum of routine operations tightened into a sharp, almost painful anticipation. Maintenance crews worked with renewed vigor, checking every system, every weapon conduit with meticulous care. Pilots spent hours in their cockpits, running pre-flight diagnostics and mental drills. Gunners double-checked their targeting arrays, their fingers twitching with an almost involuntary urge to engage. The colossal ships, which had been traveling in a more relaxed formation, began to tighten their ranks, their defensive screens activating, their weapon systems powering up, casting a faint, electric glow across their hulls. The silence that now settled upon the fleet was different from the previous years of quiet anticipation. This was the silence before the storm, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the measured breaths of thousands of crew members, their hearts pounding in unison, a drumbeat of approaching conflict. Every crew member, from the lowest-ranking technician to the highest-ranking officer, stood ready, their training kicking in, instincts honed to a razor's edge. Fingers hovered over triggers, poised to unleash unimaginable destruction. The air in every bridge and control room was thick with the scent of ozone and the unspoken tension of a species on the precipice of its most brutal confrontation. The Silos, the architects of their pain, were finally within reach. The long march through darkness was almost over. The time for vengeance was nigh. The colossal armada, bristling with untold power, entered the final approach, a silent, menacing shadow cast across the distant stars. As the vanguard of the 900,000 warships breached the Xylos system's outer marker, the colossal fleet braced for the immediate, furious onslaught they had anticipated for years. Every sensor array was straining. Every weapon system was primed. Every crew member held their breath, waiting for the surge of enemy signatures, the flash of energy weapons, the chaos of a desperate final battle. But the expected surge never materialized. The void remained eerily, unnervingly silent. Admiral Vance, her posture rigid on the Retribution's bridge, watched the main holographic display, her brow furrowed in a deep line of confusion. The tactical readouts showed nothing but empty space, save for the faint, distant gleam of the system's central star. There were no defensive platforms, no automated sentinels, no distant probes, nothing to suggest the presence of a hostile, advanced civilization guarding its borders. It was a silence more profound and unsettling than any roar of battle. Her voice, usually firm, held a hint of disquiet as she ordered the fleet to proceed with extreme caution. All ships maintain defensive posture, or proceed at 1/4 impulse. Long-range scans, maximum sensitivity. We expect resistance. Silence is irregular. The fleet advanced slowly, a shimmering behemoth cutting through the cosmic quiet. The first celestial body they reached was a magnificent gas giant, swirling bands of color and beautiful, icy rings circling it like a serene crown. According to their limited intelligence, this was a key strategic point, likely location for Xylos staging grounds or resource extraction operations. Yet, close-range scans revealed nothing. No hidden bases within its swirling storms. No sophisticated Xylos infrastructure burrowed into its icy moons. It was pristine, untouched, as if no intelligent life had ever so much as glanced its way. The silence deepened, becoming almost oppressive. The vast emptiness stretched before them, stark contrast to the imagined battlegrounds they had replayed in their minds for so long. Doubt began to creep in, a cold tendril of unease coiling around the fierce resolve that had fueled their endless journey. Was their intelligence flawed? Had they come to the wrong system? The notion seemed impossible, given the meticulous analysis performed for years. As they pushed deeper, approaching the system's central star, they found more planets. Each orb, from rocky inner worlds to frigid outer spheres, appeared seemingly pristine and utterly untouched. No sprawling cities visible from orbit. No telltale energy signatures indicative of vast industrial complexes. No fleets of starships patrolling their designated sectors. It was a ghost system, echoing with an absence that grated on the nerves of the waiting armada. The sheer lack of activity was a stark contradiction to the violent efficiency with which the Xylos had struck Earth. How could such a powerful, technologically advanced empire simply vanish? Or perhaps they had never truly existed in the form humanity had imagined. Admiral Vance ordered the deployment of advanced long-range sensor buoys, spreading them across the system in a vast web, hoping to catch even the faintest whisper of an energy signature, a hidden station, anything. The buoys reported back, their readings mirroring the emptiness they had encountered thus far. Finally, the primary Xylos homeworld came into view. According to their best estimates, this was the heart of the enemy empire, a lush, vibrant, Earth-like planet, teeming with life-sustaining conditions. The human crews, despite their confusion, felt a familiar surge of anticipation, a tightening in their chests. This had to be it. This was where the Xylos would make their stand. But as they drew closer, a chilling reality began to unfold. Were no gleaming cities reaching for the sky, no bustling spaceports, no orbital defense grid pulsating with defiant energy. Instead, what greeted their eyes were vast, ancient ruins. Colossal structures, once perhaps magnificent, now lay silent, half buried by centuries of encroaching vegetation. Towers leaned at impossible angles, their elegant lines broken by the relentless march of time and nature. What had once been vibrant, bustling metropolises were now silent, crumbling husks, choked by wild, overgrown forests and swallowed by creeping deserts. The images streamed back to the Retribution's bridge, projected onto the main screen in stark, undeniable clarity. This was not a thriving, hostile empire. This was a grave. Reconnaissance drones, specially designed for atmospheric entry and detailed ground scanning, were immediately deployed, descended into the hazy atmosphere, their advanced optics transmitting live feeds back to the fleet. The images were profoundly unsettling. Ancient plazas, overgrown with moss, cramped avenues cracked and reclaimed by the wild, what looked like docking bays filled with millennia of accumulated dust and debris. There were no fresh tracks, no recent energy signatures, no signs of life, let alone a technologically advanced civilization capable of striking Earth. The sheer scale of the ruins suggested a civilization that had been vast and powerful, but one that had collapsed, not merely relocated. The conclusion was inescapable, chilling every soul on the bridge. The enemy they had traveled light years to avenge themselves upon was seemingly gone, not defeated in battle, not hiding, but extinct, swallowed by the sands of time. The silos were not hostile strongholds, but archaeological sites, monuments to a vanished race. The silence of their ghost worlds echoed with a profound, terrifying mystery. Leaving the 900,000 warships prepared for an apocalyptic battle, floating in a void of bewildering, unsettling peace. The vengeance they sought felt hollow, directed at an enemy that no longer existed, raising a terrifying question. If this was true, then what exactly had attacked Earth? The initial shock that rippled through the human fleet upon discovering the ruined Xylos homeworld gradually gave way to a profound, unsettling confusion. The collective righteous fury, meticulously cultivated over years of travel and grief, now felt misplaced, directed at a phantom enemy. How could a vanished civilization, once seemingly extinct for centuries, have launched the devastating Great Collapse on Earth just weeks ago? The question hung heavy in the air on the Retribution's bridge, a riddle that demanded an immediate answer. Admiral Vance, her initial bewilderment settling into a cold, scientific resolve, immediately ordered a full forensic analysis of the Xylos ruins and the surrounding space. Every available resource was dedicated to uncovering the truth. Science vessels, equipped with humanity's most advanced scanning technology, meticulously probed the ancient cities, while dedicated research teams, comprised of xenolinguists, archaeologists, and historians, pored over every artifact, every subtle energy signature, searching for clues. The silence of the ghost worlds was no longer merely unsettling. It was a vast, cosmic mystery, waiting to be unraveled. The breakthrough came from deep within the primary Xylos planetary core. Advanced, high-penetration scans began to pick up faint, residual energy signatures buried beneath layers of rock. In time, it wasn't a power source, but something far more intriguing, a vast, intricate network of data archives, miraculously preserved despite the planet's surface decay. It was as if the very consciousness of the Xylos had been carefully, deliberately interred, a monumental effort to save their history, their knowledge, perhaps even themselves, from utter oblivion. Humanity's best xenolinguists, working tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the ghostly glow of data screens, began the painstaking process of decryption and translation. It was a race against time, a desperate attempt to piece together the narrative of a lost civilization from fragments of code and ancient symbols. The initial translations were slow, arduous, filled with complex cultural references and scientific jargon that baffled even the most brilliant minds. Yet, little by little, the truth began to trickle in, disturbing and heartbreaking in equal measure. The Xylos were, Indeed, the perpetrators of the attack on Earth. This much was confirmed by the archives, which contained records of the desperate, last-ditch mission. But it was not an act of malice, not a hostile invasion born of conquest or hatred. Katas, the archives revealed, were a highly intelligent and, crucially, peaceful species. Their history was filled with advancements in art, philosophy, and environmental stewardship, a civilization that had focused on harmony rather than expansion. For centuries, however, they had been facing an existential threat of unimaginable scale, a galactic-scale contagion. This wasn't a biological virus, but a slow, insidious cosmic phenomenon, a form of energy decay that consumed organic life. It spread silently, relentlessly, transmuting living tissue into inert, crystalline structures, leaving behind husks of what once thrived. Their own species, despite all their scientific prowess, had been slowly succumbing to its inevitable march. Their population had dwindled, their vibrant cities fallen silent, not from war, but from the slow, agonizing grip of this cosmic plague. Their attack on Earth, the archives painfully clarified, was not an invasion in the traditional sense, but a desperate, final, agonizing attempt to preserve their species, to transfer their remaining consciousness and the entirety of their vast technological and cultural legacy onto a vibrant, habitable world last. It's a desperate gamble to keep the flame of their civilization alive before their physical forms succumbed entirely. The warships that had descended upon Earth were, in fact, incredibly advanced Orc ships designed to carry not armies, but vast data repositories and fragmented consciousnesses. And the weaponry that had shattered Earth's defenses was, horrifyingly, a massive, uncontrolled data transfer pulse. It was meant to overwrite, to infuse their very essence and knowledge into the new world, to find a way to thrive in a different biological framework, not to destroy. Earth, with its abundant life, its pristine atmosphere, and its relative proximity, had simply been the closest, most viable target for their desperate survival attempt. The Xylos had not been an enemy driven by conquest or malice, but a dying species pushed to the absolute brink, making a tragic, catastrophic mistake in their final moments. The revelation hit the human fleet like a physical blow. The righteous fury that had sustained them for years evaporated, replaced by a profound, collective, somber understanding. The 900,000 warships designed for vengeance now floated in a void filled not with the ghosts of a conquered enemy, but with the echoes of a lost civilization's desperate final plea. The images of Earth's suffering, once sources of burning hatred, now transformed into symbols of an unimaginable, shared cosmic tragedy. The Xylos, their enemy, had, in their own way, been victims too. This understanding settled heavily on every crew member, from the bridge of the Retribution to the lowest engineering deck. There was no enemy to annihilate, only a profound sense of cosmic irony and grief. The mission, the very purpose of their monumental journey, had changed irrevocably. The vengeance they sought felt hollow, pointless. Yet, the question of what to do next, how to reconcile this crushing truth with their existence as a war fleet, loomed large. The weight of their unfulfilled purpose pressed down, leaving them adrift in a sea of new, complex emotions, their weapons still primed, but their target erased. The revelation regarding the Xylos had not only shattered the human fleet's righteous fury, but had also replaced it with a profound, almost paralyzing, somber understanding. The 900,000 warships, each forged in the crucible of vengeance, now drifted in a void that echoed not with the triumphant shouts of a conquering army, but with the tragic, silent lament of a lost civilization. The initial days after the decryption of the Xylos archives were marked by an almost eerie quiet across the fleet. Crews gathered in hushed groups, discussing the unbelievable truth. Their enemy had been a dying race, desperate for survival, and Earth had been an accidental casualty, a tragic misunderstanding of cosmic proportions. The burning desire for retribution that had propelled them for years was now a hollow ember, leaving a vast emptiness in its wake. Admiral Vance, her face reflecting the immense moral shift gripping her command, spent hours poring over the translated Silos records, each entry a new stab of sorrow. The irony was almost unbearable. They had traveled across the galaxy to punish, only to find victims. The weight of their unfulfilled purpose, the sheer scale of the military might, now aimless, pressed heavily on everyone. A fleet built on vengeance, when the target of that vengeance no longer exists, and the reasons for its wrath have been completely rewritten. But this disquieting peace, this period of introspective shock, was destined to be short-lived. Just as humanity grappled with the profound moral and existential questions brought forth by the Xylos' tragic fate, the quiet hum of the retributions, long-range sensors suddenly sharpened, pulling every officer's attention to their consoles. Admiral, Commander Jian Li's voice cut through the subdued atmosphere on the bridge, his tone now sharp with urgency. New contact? Massive signature, accelerating into the system from Galactic Rim, bearing 079 by Mark 221. The comm on the bridge instantly evaporated, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. Every screen flickered to life, showing projected trajectories in sensor data. Magnify, identify, signature type. Vance commanded, her mind snapping back to military protocol. The past few days of philosophical contemplation shoved aside by the abrupt return of tangible threat. The unknown was always the most dangerous. The sensor data was unlike anything they had ever encountered in their extensive travels. Non-organic Admiral, reported Lieutenant Anya Sharma, her voice strained as she processed the complex readings. No known drive signature, no detectable life signs. Its vast readings indicate a colossal mass, but is remarkably silent. No active comms, no energy emissions consistent with propulsion. It's moving at incredible speed, direct trajectory towards the Xylos prime world. A cold dread began to coil in Vance's stomach. A vast, silent, non-organic entity accelerating through space. It defied conventional understanding. A ghost of an object moving with purpose, yet lacking any recognizable characteristics of a starship or natural celestial body. The very anomaly of its nature made it terrifying. Energy signature. Vance pressed, a premonition gnawing at her. Does it match anything in the Xylos archives? Anything from Earth's attack? Lieutenant Sharma's fingers danced across her console, pulling up comparative data. The silence on the bridge was absolute, every eye fixed on her. Then, her voice, barely a whisper, confirmed the worst fears. Admiral, it's a match. A precise match. The unique, destructive energy signature. It perfectly correlates with the residual energy patterns from the Great Collapse on Earth. A gasp rippled through the bridge crew. It wasn't the Xylos' desperate data transfer pulse that had caused the devastation. That had been merely a side effect of their desperate final act. This new, terrifying signature was the true cause. A galactic scale contagion. The very plague that had consumed the Xylos. The crushing, silent force that had turned billions of peaceful beings, into inert, crystalline husks, was not a natural disaster confined to their home system. It was an entity, an active, intelligent, or perhaps instinctively destructive force. The Xylos records, Vance murmured, almost to herself. They spoke of a slow consumption, a conversion of life. This is it. The truth slammed into the fleet with the force of a supernova. Xylos had not sent an invasion force. Earth, they had sent a desperate, last-ditch plea for survival. A flawed and tragic attempt to escape something truly horrifying, something that had followed them across the stars. The warships that attacked Earth were not hostile. They were Arc ships, fleeing. And now, the hunter was here. The true enemy, a consuming entity of unimaginable power. Later identified as the Null Harvester, was accelerating towards them. It wasn't driven by conquest, not by territory, not by resources. It was driven by an instinct to consume and convert organic matter into inert, crystalline structures. It had consumed the Xylos, leaving their worlds as desolate ruins, and it was now bearing down on the human fleet. Its ultimate goal, the complete eradication of all organic life in the Xylos system. And then, without doubt, it would move on, sterilizing systems, following the faint trail of organic matter, until perhaps, eventually, it would find its way to the scattered colonies of humanity. The 900,000 warships, built for vengeance, now faced a cosmic horror, a silent, relentless force of pure entropy. The realization settled in with chilling finality. They hadn't arrived for a battle of retribution, but had stumbled directly into the path of an extinction-level event, a cosmic predator that sought to turn the vibrant canvas of the galaxy into a sterile, crystalline wasteland. The long journey for revenge had ended, but a new, infinitely more terrifying war had just begun. The true enemy, a colossal, terrifying entity now formally identified as the Null Harvester, loomed on the Retribution's main view screen, its crystalline form reflecting the distant starlight with an unsettling, inert beauty. It was unlike any threat humanity had ever conceived. Not a starship, not an army, but a force of nature, driven by an inherent, relentless instinct to consume and convert all organic matter into sterile, lifeless, crystalline structures. Its approach was methodical, silent, and utterly relentless. Its power terrifying in its sheer, unyielding purpose. Tamara Vant stood, rooted on the bridge, the weight of a galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. The colossal fleet, 900,000 warships, strong, the mightiest ever assembled, had been forged from the fires of vengeance, propelled by a singular, consuming rage. Now, that purpose felt like a distant, irrelevant memory. They had come for retribution against a perceived enemy, only to stumble upon a profound cosmic tragedy and, worse, a far greater, more existential terror. The decision before her was monumental, a choice that would redefine humanity's place in the universe. Their vast military might, designed for overwhelming force against the Xylos, could now be used not for retribution, but for defense, not just of themselves, but of the very life the Null Harvester sought to eradicate, including the last vestiges of the Xylos' consciousness and legacy still residing on their prime world. A new, different kind of roar began to ripple through the human fleet, one born not of burning vengeance, but of a fierce, protective resolve, a primal instinct to defend. The silent, almost mournful atmosphere that had pervaded the ships after the Xylos revelation was replaced by a taut, determined energy. Every crew member, from the bridge officers to the engineers, deep in the engine rooms, felt the shift. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about safeguarding life itself against a force that threatened to sterilize the galaxy. The holographic tactical map on the Retribution's bridge glowed ominously, showing the Null Harvester steadily closing in on the Xylos' homeworld, a beautiful, lush planet that contained not just ancient ruins, but also the precious, fragile data, archives and, perhaps even the disembodied consciousnesses of the species humanity had almost annihilated in their misguided quest for vengeance. The irony was bitter, but the duty was clear. They were now the last line of defense for a species they had once sought to destroy. A testament to humanity's capacity for profound moral evolution in the face of universal horror. Admiral Vance took a deep, steadying breath, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her command team. Their eyes met hers, reflecting a shared understanding, a silent agreement that the mission had fundamentally changed. Commander Lee, Lieutenant Sharma, she commanded, her voice ringing with newfound clarity and an unbreakable resolve. All ships, new mission parameters. Divert all power from offensive-only systems to full defensive and multi-spectrum offensive. Prioritize shielding and energy distribution for sustained engagement. We are no longer striking an enemy. We are defending. We defend this system. Defend life itself. Her words, broadcast across the fleet, were met not with confusion, but with a surge of renewed purpose. The silent anger had transformed into a steely, unyielding determination. This was a fight for something far grander than revenge. It was a fight for the very principle of life in a cold, uncaring universe. The colossal fleet, a moving city of steel and fire, began to shift its formation with astonishing speed and precision. The ships, once arrayed for an overwhelming offensive, now reconfigured themselves into a vast, layered defensive screen, positioning the more vulnerable science and support vessels behind the heavy dreadnoughts and cruisers. Energy shields flared to maximum capacity, casting shimmering, multicolored auroras around each vessel. Weapon systems, designed for targeted annihilation, were recalibrated for wide area suppression and sustained fire, aimed at the looming threat. The null harvester, now filling a significant portion of the main view screen, showed no discernible reaction to the human fleet's maneuvers, maintaining its silent, inexorable approach. It was a terrifying opponent because it had no discernible emotions, no fear, no anger, only the cold, unthinking purpose of its existence. It was a force of nature, and humanity was about to challenge it. All ships, Admiral Vance's voice boomed across the comms, resonating with a calm authority that belied the immense tension on the bridge. Target acquisition on the null harvester. Fire at will. The order, simple and direct, ignited a storm of activity. A new roar went through the fleet, a sound unlike any heard before. It was not the roar of vengeance, but a fierce, protective, defiant sound, a testament to humanity's spirit. Thousands upon thousands of plasma cannons roared to life, unleashing brilliant lances of superheated energy that streaked across the void. Swarms of missiles, each tipped with advanced kinetic warheads, launched from their silos, leaving fiery trails in their wake. Railguns thundered, launching slugs of condensed matter at velocities that dwarfed anything seen in historical warfare. The combined firepower of 900,000 warships built for destruction now turned their mighty cannons towards the true enemy, unleashing a torrent of energy and matter, illuminating the darkness with flashes of terrifying power. The null harvester, vast and terrifying, was enveloped in the storm of humanity's assault, its crystalline surface shimmering as the incoming fire impacted. It showed no sign of pain, no tactical retreat, simply absorbing the unimaginable barrage, its silent, destructive energy signature steadily growing stronger as it continued its advance. The battle had begun, not as an act of retribution, but as a desperate, universe-defining struggle. This was not the war they had come for, nor the enemy they had anticipated, but it was the war humanity was uniquely positioned to feed, a war not born of hatred, but of a profound, newly discovered compassion for a fallen species, a testament to their remarkable, adaptable spirit, their unforeseen capacity for empathy, and their unwavering will to protect all life against the chilling entropy of the void. In the heart of the Xylos system, midst the ruins of a lost civilization and under the shadow of a cosmic horror, humanity found its true purpose. A new era of galactic custodianship had begun, forged not in the ashes of vengeance, but in the crucible of a shared, terrifying threat.